You know, Thomas, I don't know what you're talking about half the time. Why is that?
I don't know.
I mean, you just go on and on talking about nothing. Why can't you have a normal conversation? You're always trying to sound like some damn medicine man or something. I mean, how many times have you seen Dances with Wolves? 100, 200? Oh, jeez. You have seen it that many times, haven't you? Don't you even know how to be a real Indian?
I guess not.
Oh, shit, no wonder. Jeez. I guess I'll have to teach you then, eh? First of all, quit grinning like an idiot. Indians ain't supposed to smile like that. Get stoic. You gotta look mean or people won't respect you. White people run all over you if you don't look mean. You gotta look like a warrior. You gotta look like you just came back from killing a buffalo.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we are back on the mainland on our cinematic trek across America. This week, we're in the Gem State. This state's name came from a politician named George M. Willing, claiming that it was a Shoshone word meaning gem of the mountains. But it turns out that it was bullshit, and Willing wanted to name it after a little girl named Ida, which is a weird thing to do. Another strange thing to happen in this state was Evel Knievel's jump at Snake River Canyon on a rocket cycle. If you've been to this jump site, you've been in Idaho. Dan, if you could name a state after a little girl, what would you name it?
I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't put Ho after their name.
That is one of the few correct answers to that question.
I mean, I would call it a no-brainer, but I maybe not.
Yeah,
maybe that's a thing that people do. But what I would, you know what though, I would certainly find a good bullshit excuse to do it.
Sure, right on. Yeah, Dan. So we're in Idaho on this episode, which is our first Pacific Northwest episode, which is where you and I both reside. So even though it's a state away for both of us, it still feels a little closer to home. So that's comforting.
Yes, well, and the screenwriter of Smoke Signals,
yes,
Sherman Alexie, was even though this takes place on the Coeur d'Alene, partially the Coeur d'Alene Reservation in Idaho, he grew up on the Spokane Reservation in Washington State. Right,
which is Spokane is eastern Washington. It's just across the border from Idaho.
Yeah, it's close. I mean, there's a significant scene that takes place at the Spokane Falls in Smoke Signals.
And also Chris Iyer, the director, from Portland, Oregon, where I live. So we both have our Pacific Northwest corners spoken for, represented fully in this film. Dan, have you ever been to Idaho?
Never been to Idaho.
Me either. You? I know people who are from there and who go back to visit frequently. I hear it's lovely. Everything I've seen from it makes it seem like it's a really beautiful place. And I would love to go visit sometime. There are certainly some moments during the movie Smoke Signals where they're, on their trek and it's just like, oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the impression I get is that a lot of the landscape of Idaho is pretty. That's the impression I get. I can't think of a reason why I would go to Idaho. I don't know anyone.
Well, don't you want to visit the jump site of Evel Knievel's where is it? Snake River Canyon jump?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes. But I think of that as almost a state in and of itself, separate from Idaho.
Well, I'd also say you and I
the real 51st state really is called the site of Evel Knievel's jump at Snake River Canyon.
Well, I was going to say, you and I aren't really outdoorsy people. We don't ski. I realize that there's some good skiing out in Idaho. Is that where Sun Valley is? Yes, that's in Idaho. I hear that it's a lovely ski town. So, I mean, that's just not part of who we are.
Idaho has a lot to offer, just not to me or John.
Sure, I would love to see it. And
other
know
than
for
this
myself.
film.
Yeah. So, Dan, I feel like we should just jump right into this and start talking about this film, because
absolutely.
I know that we probably both have a lot to say.
I think we do.
Shall I begin with a synopsis?
Synopsize away.
Victor and Thomas are two young men who venture from the Coeur d'Alene Reservation in Idaho to Arizona in order to retrieve the ashes of Victor's abusive and then absent father, Arnold. Victor has always felt slightly annoyed by Thomas, but that feeling is far from mutual. Thomas, who is the more spiritual of the two, feels bonded to Victor, especially since he was rescued by Arnold, Victor's dad, as an infant during a house fire. During their travels, Victor tries to shed Thomas of the spiritual Indian stereotypes imposed on him by popular culture and instead instill him with the more stoic attributes in order to scare away white folks. During this time, they learn a lot about themselves, each other, and also Arnold, whose life was more complicated than they both realized. So Dan, I know that you have quite a bit of background, at least with the source material, Sherman Alexie's work. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Right. So in my work as a language arts teacher, I have taught in the past Sherman Alexie's The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, and have also taught some of Sherman Alexie's short stories, have also acknowledged in my teachings that Sherman Alexie has a checkered reputation due to his allegations of misconduct, which I guess we can go farther than saying they're allegations because he himself has fessed up to the misconduct.
Period. End of story.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, there's that trouble, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to bring that out because I don't want that to checker this conversation where we're focusing mainly on smoke signals, and Alexie's and that part of Alexie's career, which predates, to the best of my knowledge, any of his misconduct.
Oh, so absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, so Smoke Signals is based largely on a loosely connected collection of short stories he wrote called The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven.
Right, yeah.
And of course, there's the line in Smoke Signals about Victor and Thomas being the Lone Ranger and Tonto.
And then is it
which Thomas,
like Tonto and Tonto, yeah.
Right, and which is very characteristic of Sherman Alexie's work. He's a writer who, as I stated before, was a member of the Spokane tribe and grew up on this Spokane reservation, and that he himself is indigenous. This film being the first at least like
mainstream,
I guess mainstream, it was independent, but it was a Miramax film in 1998. So which also like
sideline
a Miramax
mainstream.
film in a Miramax film in 1998 also won Best Picture.
Yeah.
So Smoke Signals, it came out in that year, big year for that, but it was the first big film to be entirely written, directed, produced, and starring primarily an indigenous cast.
Yeah.
And the other thing with Sherman Alexie and Sherman Alexie's work, he does make a lot of reference to both history and it's flippant. And what you get a lot of in Alexie is the humor that came about as a way of dealing with the really severe marginalization of indigenous tribes it's really when you learn about it, and when you look back, and it really was a genocidal campaign by the United States government. And what you see in this movie and in Alexi's work is how you see the direct result of that. You see how all right, fry bread.
Sure.
Fry bread is that's like a staple of indigenous cuisine in North America. And it's really common, especially in Alexi's work, and stories like the one that Thomas tells about Victor's mother having to serve who made the best fry bread.
Yeah.
Fry bread was basically, it's comparable to matzah for Jews. The bread that we had that had to have been made in the 40 day and 40 night biblical journey, Exodus out of Egypt. So it's this bread that represents oppression. And fry bread was also made as Indians were, and I'm saying Indians a lot because that is the term that Alexi uses.
Sure.
And it's a term that has been embraced. So I prefer to use indigenous people.
We may flop back and forth between a few different ones. I know that Sherman Alexi preferred, to self-identify as Indian. That is not everybody's preference. So,
right.
Yeah.
I just to put it out there, that's what I try to use is indigenous, as I feel like it's the most accurate and respectful coming from me. So,
right. And if somebody does choose to self-identify as one or another, then certainly if that's something that is known knowledge that we're aware of, we'll stick to that.
Right. But the idea of indigenous, meaning the people who are native to this land, is, and it says a lot in that when they were forcibly removed from their land and given all these United States government like lard and all the of course, terrible. So. So they made fry bread. That was what they did. But I read this and I'm thinking like, wow, they were just giving these people just the like unhealthiest stuff.
Sure.
I can't even say food, just the unhealthiest stuff. Reservations were staffed with subpar doctors. It was the doctors who couldn't practice anywhere else. It was the drunks who like no town would want them, so they got sent to these reservations. Teachers who either just didn't give a shit or who were really there to convert, because we also had the missionaries coming out to reservations and forcibly removing children from families. So what you have with Sherman Alexi is all of that in the rearview mirror, and he throws around words like Custer, kind of the same way Mel Brooks did Hitler,
right?
And there's that humor, but it's also there's that bitterness in the humor and that sense of like we're laughing because we've cried all the tears we have. So this is really all that we have. All that we have left is to laugh at it, and everything from that to the cultural representations or misrepresentations.
Sure, yeah.
And the iconic character of Tonto.
Right. And what I have also found, and I did a little bit of reading, some articles, because I didn't want to just only, express my views on it as a white person. I wanted to make sure that I was reading information that was put out there by journalists who were themselves indigenous. And I, did see a lot of criticism about this movie where it's trying to find the balance of, hey, we recognize that this movie was really big for, mass media pop culture for indigenous people, but also it's really bad in the way that it represents a lot of indigenous people, and it's very outdated and maybe does more harm than good in some of the ways that it's representing indigenous folks. And there was in High Country News, there's an article that's written that's called "Smoke Signals Was Needed, but it doesn't hold up." There's an article that was written. It's on a blog that's about diversity in film from Xavier University in 2019 called "The quote unquote real Indian man as constructed through a real Indian stereotype." That's all about smoke signals. And it's they're both really fascinating reads just about how, these characters and the things that they're trying to put forth, at that time, sure, we hadn't been hearing these perspectives, but, that has at least paved the way to open up the discussion and to create more opportunities for people to give perhaps a better outlook, maybe a more accurate outlook on identity for people who are of, indigenous cultures in this country. So it's been a really fascinating experience to explore this more. And what I've really also loved is going in and looking at some of the the TV shows, and I haven't watched any other movies necessarily, but TV shows for sure that are out right now that are showing indigenous culture. I mean, just right now, The Curse, the one that's on Paramount Plus with Emma Stone and Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie. Dan, I don't know if you've caught any of it. Only 2 episodes have aired so far.
I have not.
It is wild, and it deals, because it's from the perspective of these 2 white people who are, it's white savior complex. They're trying to, improve things for this town of people who are in these indigenous communities. Nathan Fielder's character used to work at a casino on a reservation. And, it's just very exploitative the way that they're approaching even their so-called friends who are, indigenous themselves. And being as it is Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie, of course it is very like cringy and uncomfortable to watch because you're just like, no, don't say that. That's awful. Don't do that. And I also noticed that, the season 2 opener for the show Reservation Dogs is the episode title is called The Curse. And have you ever seen Reservation Dogs?
Yeah, I saw several episodes in the first season. In fact, it struck me how I feel like it's a kind of a descendant of Smoke Signals.
100%. Well, I mean, also Gary Farmer, who plays Arnold, is in The Curse and in Reservation Dogs.
He's the uncle. He's the
burnt the stoner. Is he
right?
Somebody's uncle, I think. Yeah. And he's
right,
great, and such a different character, which is so refreshing. Yeah, and Reservation Dogs. I watched the first season, and then I've been getting into the second season, and it's so good, and it definitely feels so refreshing. Seeing from 1998 where things kind of started. It's definitely that meme of like, how it started, how it's going, how it started
right.
with Smoke Signals, where it's a little bit more binary. It doesn't really show all the dimensions that it could be showing. And then you have Reservation Dogs, where it's so layered, and it really gets into more of the humor of life of people who live on a reservation, and, then going outward into other parts of, so far I've just seen the country and seeing how those things play out, which is great because, what we're watching here in Smoke Signals, it's a road movie. It's a journey movie. It's a road trip.
Right. Yeah.
And, especially as they leave the reservation, they get onto a bus that, has all white people on it who, of course, give them funny looks. And even when somebody's being nice to them, it's hard for them, or at least for Victor, to accept that this person is being genuinely nice. He is very suspicious of anybody else. And so he always has to put on this stoic face. Whereas Thomas, sees what could be the best in people and assumes that people have good intentions, and takes on this spiritual Indian character to maybe meet white people where they are and where they would see indigenous folks, because this is what he's seen in movies. I mean, they make a big point of just like, oh, how many times have you seen Last of the Mohicans, Dances with Wolves? Like they make a big point to say like, oh, what he knows about his own place in the world he gets from these other movies and TV shows. And I thought that was a really fascinating way to kind of introduce us to this character. And I thought that Thomas was great. I love Thomas.
Right. Yeah.
Played by
Thomas and
Evan Adams.
Right.
Yeah.
And these are characters that find their way into a lot of Alexi's work, and a lot of them are very autobiographical, especially Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, which focuses the main character in that. His name is Arnold.
Oh, okay.
He's basically Alexi, but it's not the same character. He is Alexi as a 14-year-old living on the Spokane reservation, and then just like feeling like there's not a place for him there because so Alexi was born with I want to say it's hydrocephalus.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's like when there's an abnormally large amount of cerebral fluid in the brain's ventricular system.
Whoa, what does that do to you?
Well, what does it do to you?
Yeah.
He had to have brain surgery when he was 6 months old, and he had other side effects.
I'm looking it up, and it seems like it's something, that you have from birth, and it's pretty much taken care of when you're an infant.
Yeah.
But if it's not taken care of, it can be very, very, very bad.
And he had a big head. So, and on the reservation, like he couldn't do like a lot of athletics. There were a lot of things that he couldn't do because of his condition. And it was kind of like he wasn't, quote unquote Indian enough for the other folks on the reservation.
That's a big thing, being Indian enough.
Right. And he wasn't white enough to fit in. He ends up going to a high school off the reservation, and he's the only indigenous person there. He winds up playing for the basketball team at the school. But meanwhile, his best friend, it's kind of like a Thomas and Victor thing. He's got this best friend who, like, his best friend is the one who's like, he's cool and he's the athlete, but he also isn't as witty.
Right.
And like also like Arnold draws a lot of things. He'll represent a lot of, and it's not the Native American stereotypes. He's representing the stereotypes as well, but also just the reality of it. Like there's this picture he draws that's him, and half is wearing, like, dressed the way that your average 14-year-old boy would dress on the reservation. It's, he's got like little labels like, Kmart sneakers.
Oh, okay.
Like Lee's jeans. And meanwhile, the other half is like, a white kid.
Right.
And it's more, designer and more hip. So
yeah,
it's so Alexi. So you find these characters a lot. You also find there's a lot of commonalities in Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. Arnold's sister and her, I think, husband are killed in a fire, and like they're drunk.
Oh, so fires and alcohol, which, I mean, alcohol is, alcoholism is known to be, or has been known to be, prevalent on reservations, historically speaking.
Well, because the government made sure that Yep.
Absolutely.
Government
Yeah.
made sure that folks had plenty of access to that. And just among the other really awful things.
I want to go back to one thing really quick. You were talking about how the government set up a lot of reservations with, doctors who were, bottom of the barrel. And as you were talking about that, it really made me think of Reservation Dogs with Bobby Lee's character, who's the doctor at like the local health clinic on the reservation. And he's just, I have to imagine that it's like, okay, he's like barely a doctor. He has the qualifications, but if anybody anywhere else would walk into a doctor's office and he would walk in, they'd be like, nope, I'm out of here.
Right. Yeah.
So I know that you're probably referring to, earlier days, in health clinics for doctors on reservations, but it still rings true in the world of Reservation Dogs.
Oh, right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. It's still, there's still that sense of, right, we're not getting the grade A.
We're not getting McDreamy
here.
over here. We're not getting George Clooney.
No.
We're getting Bobby Lee.
No one who has ever worked at Sloan Gray Memorial is clocking in at the reservation clinic.
Although Pacific Northwest, so they were
That's true.
They were nearby.
But
yeah. Well, I do
talk
want
about that. That would be a good season of Grays. I'd watch that.
Sure, that'd be pretty amazing.
There we go. There's my idea.
So I mentioned, I really enjoyed Evan Adams, who played Thomas. I really thought that he was fantastic. I thought that Adam Beach was really great as Victor, but I got to tell you, Victor's wig at the end, that's hard to watch. That's kind of just we could have been so much better if only we tried a little bit harder. The wig budget had maybe $30 more in it.
I don't know why he didn't just shave his head.
Well, I imagine that they didn't shoot things in order. There had to have been something with that, but it was a particularly bad wig. However, I will say that the aging that they did for Arnold, I thought was very good. I was pretty impressed with Gary Farmer's, difference in age, because he's, starts off and he's probably in his 20s, and then we see him in his 40s and then maybe 60s. Maybe even less amount of time than that, but I thought that it was very good. And also Irene Bedard, who's plays Susie, who was the voice of Pocahontas in Disney's Pocahontas. She was fantastic. I thought that the casting all around was really strong. And shout out Tom Skerritt as the cop towards the end, which I like to imagine that he's the same. It's the same character from Harold and Maude who pulls over Maude when she's stealing the tree. Tom Skerritt just gets transferred to Phoenix or wherever that police station is. Did you know Tom Skerritt's 90 years old? I'd looked this up before we started recording. Can you believe that?
Wow. Yeah, he sure is. I'm looking at this right now.
I feel like for such a long time, he was just kind of frozen in an agelessness. And I was trying to think, when is the last time I even saw Tom Skerritt? And it looked like he's done some work as recently as 2021. But yeah, dude's 90 years old. I hope he's doing well. I always love saying Tom Skerritt. Also, great name. Love the name Tom Skerritt. It's the name that you have to say the whole thing.
Tom Skerritt, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that it was a really strong cast. It was really...
Oh, he lives in Seattle.
Oh, does he? Tom Skerritt. Cool. Look out for him.
I will.
It was really cool. It is the year 2023. We certainly see a lot more Indigenous representation in movies and in TV shows, and not just ones that are about Indigenous people and Indigenous communities. And to then go back to a movie from 1998 and kind of see where this all kind of started, like where people kind of got their entry into it. It was a really neat way to recognize the progress, even though I feel like from 1998 there was a long time before there really was much movement. And it seems like in the past few years, we're starting to get more movement as far as representation goes. And there's still such a long way to go. And I'm hopeful for the future. And also, I don't know if it's a direct result of just being involved with more, I guess, community activism around indigenous communities. I mean, certainly the Dakota pipeline issue that came up back in 2015, 2016, that's 2016, early 2016. Yeah, it's 2016. When that was going on, that seemed to be, when I at least became more aware of artists and other, indigenous people who were creating work to reflect the present day struggles in their communities. And I really hope, I mean, look, I live in Portland, Oregon. This is a bubble. It is famously it is a liberal bubble, but like immediately outside of this liberal bubble, it is very, very red.
Oh yeah.
And I understand that I am seeing a lot more than maybe what some other people are seeing out there when it comes to artists and creators who are really making work to reflect the unique struggles of people who do come from these indigenous communities. And I hope to see just way more of that. I mean, Reservation Dogs, I mean, I think there's already been 3 seasons, and I don't think that it's ending anytime soon. So
Oh no, I think it just did end.
Did it just end? Okay.
I think the current season was the last.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. But it's, just kind of its popularity was so strong, and I'm so optimistic for where things can keep it going from here.
Well, yeah. And that's the other thing now is with TV, a show, I like that less shows are overstaying their welcome.
Yeah.
And that those writers are moving from those shows and then taking other opportunities and moving into other shows and telling more stories.
It's funny that you say that, because I feel like, especially recently, it's like I look on Instagram and I see like Deadline post something, and it's just like some TV show that I've never heard of. It's just like, Whispering Eyes is ending on CW after 32 seasons. And I'm just like, I've never heard of this. Or like today it was like Blue Bloods is ending after 17 seasons. I'm just like, it's still on the air? Blue Bloods is still around?
What?
I saw today that Deadline reported that Blue Bloods was ending, and I was so shocked that it was still on the air.
Seriously? Yeah. Wow. Oh, I am taken aback.
I'm so sorry to break the news to you, but I mean, it's true. Blue Bloods is finally coming to an end.
Good for Blue Bloods for lasting this long.
Here we go. I'm just looking at Deadline's Instagram. This is so funny.
Oh.
La Brea officially ending with abbreviated season 3. What is La Brea? Never even heard of it. Blue Bloods to end.
Is it about dinosaurs?
I have no idea. The picture, I can't tell from the picture. It's people in the picture, not dinosaurs, for what it's worth. Then we've got Blue Bloods to end with 2-part season 14 airing in spring 2024 and fall 2024. Thought that show ended like 8 years ago, at least.
Yeah.
Let's see. Shadow and Bone, Glamorous, and Agent Elvis among 5 series canceled by Netflix. Never heard of any of them.
I have heard of Shadow and Bone.
Okay. SEAL Team to end with season 7 on Paramount Plus. That seems like an AI generated headline. I'm going to go on. Hold on. Let's see. Chat.openai.com. Okay. Create a headline
Oh, here we
for
go.
create a headline for a pop culture website about a fictional TV show ending after its current season. Let's see what it says. Emotional farewell, fan favorite. It doesn't. Let's see. Make up a title for the show. This is happening in real time, everybody.
It really
Sunset Dreams, the bittersweet finale of Eclipse Heights leaves fans in awe.
Wow.
Talk about that show getting
Season
canceled.
42 will be its last.
The cancellation of Eclipse Heights has left devoted... Oh, it's doing a whole big long thing. It's writing an entire article about Eclipse Heights.
Damn.
What
I wanna see
network
Eclipse Heights.
was Eclipse Heights on?
CW.
As of my last knowledge, the update in January, Eclipse Heights is a fictional TV show. Oh, come on. Have some fun.
Oh,
Anyway.
Commit.
Okay, Eclipse Heights. We're making it happen. We have to make it happen.
Eclipse Heights. That's our suggested idea.
Look, Chad Michael
Smoke Signals.
Murray was fantastic in it. I'm so thrilled for his continued success. I'm just so sad that after season 25, it's going off the air. It's leaving me in awe.
And I just hope it was so good to see Misha Barton back on TV.
Oh.
I hope she finds another.
I think she's
another
finally going to
outlet
get
for her
that Emmy.
talents.
I swear. She's overdue.
Long overdue. Long overdue. Yes.
So, Dan, what was your... I'm assuming you've seen Smoke Signals before.
No.
Oh, no, this is your first time seeing it. You just know Sherman Alexie's literary work.
I knew Sherman Alexie's work, and I had seen a couple of scenes from Smoke Signals.
Oh.
And yeah, like I'd seen a couple of scenes because it's really good just to get the patterns of speech in his writing.
Yeah.
But I'd never actually seen the entire film.
What kind of impression did it leave on you?
I really liked it. I definitely looked at it through that lens of the 1998 indie movie, fascination. And I felt like knowing that it was coming from an authentic indigenous voice.
Yeah.
And that's, I think I appreciated it and, enjoy it. It's a nice, like, road trip movie.
Yeah.
It feels like, it feels definitely like a screenplay that was written for, like grad school.
Yeah.
Final.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing very complex.
You're taking a familiar formula,
Yeah.
and then applying it where it hadn't previously been applied.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel
which
like
also made it well. Oh, and sorry if I can just add, and then I'll stop. But and I think that although I do think that the idea of the road trip play just has a deeper meaning when we're talking about indigenous people and we're talking about the tribes, the tribal relocations, the sense of having to move, but not moving voluntarily, being forced into that movement and forced into that action. So I felt that the road trip movie, the idea of the road trip, along with a lot of other things, meant a lot more in this than just like, okay, well, here's a plot that we can apply and we'll make this work. Like it actually made a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I think that a road trip, especially with two characters, one kind of being foisted upon the other. Thomas joins Victor on this journey because he is bankrolling it. because for Victor to take the bus down to Phoenix would be cost prohibitive, and Thomas says, I will give you the money. The only catch is you have to take me with you. And it's such a great way to stick these two people together who, they have their very clear differences and also their very clear similarities. And for one, it's the similarities that kind of makes him pull away a little bit. Victor, he really gets upset with Thomas because Thomas thinks that he has had this, bond with Arnold. He talks about this one time that he went to Denny's with him, and he's told Victor that story like 100 times, and Victor's so tired of hearing it. And for Victor, his father was not a good dad to him. He was abusive, physically and emotionally. He was not good to Victor's mom. He abandoned them. In his eyes, he abandoned them. And Thomas, saved this person who, and Thomas, saved
his life.
Well, literally saved his life. I mean, he was too young to remember. He's a baby, but that's part of his story. It's like he exists because this person let him exist by accident. I mean, when you see it happen, Arnold goes like, it's just like, you're a hero. And he's like, I didn't mean to be a hero. It was something along those lines. And he gets scared and he runs away. And, for Thomas, that's a life-defining moment that happened before he can form memories. And it's just like, he grew up, he's living with his grandmother. I don't remember. What did they say what happened with his parents? I can't remember.
Oh, they burned in the fire.
They burned in the fire. Right. So, he grew up with his grandmother, who is perfectly cast. She's wonderful. They look so much alike.
Yes. Oh,
the glasses
spot
and everything.
on.
Like they really
just the face.
Great casting. Yeah. The smile. Absolutely. Because Thomas has this big smile all the time. And, he's fantastic. And, he sees Victor as kind of like a brother figure, and Victor, never felt like his father ever did anything for him, saved him. And to put them in a situation where they're forced alone with each other for such a long period of time is such a great way for them to kind of balance out, their own identities and how they feel like they need to be seen as individuals, not just indigenous individuals, but individuals themselves, in context of this man, Arnold, who, they both kind of come from in a way. So I thought that it was a really clever way to kind of make the connections form. And there's some really sweet moments in there when they, when you finally see them start to get each other, especially when Victor comes around to Thomas a little bit more. It's really special. And, Adam Beach and Evan Adams both did a really great job, in these performances to express that and to kind of bring us in. And I don't know, I enjoyed watching it, and I felt like I really got invested in their lives, which was I wasn't sure, going into it, and not just because it's people who come from, indigenous ancestry. It's more of just like, this is a movie from the late 90s that doesn't have any big stars in it that I would recognize. Like, I think that there was like that mentality going into it too, where it's just like, this one completely, was off my radar, probably for the same reasons why, a lot of media about indigenous people is off of a lot of people's radars who aren't indigenous, is because it's, designed that way.
No one's putting it on their radar.
No, exactly. And so I'm really glad that we, chose this movie to focus on for Idaho rather than Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh,
it would have been a very different conversation.
I mean, full disclosure, I hate Napoleon Dynamite. So
I am not a Napoleon Dynamite fan. However, I feel like it would be a good discussion to talk about the state of Idaho.
probably,
But
I'm glad that
that's it.
yes, and I am glad that we watched Smoke Signals.
Oh, 100%. But Dan, what I wonder is, how would you see this being brought back in 2023 going on 2024?
Well, and we're actually coming up right on the 25th anniversary of the release. It was released November 27th, 1998.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it's so I thought about it a lot and thinking about Sherman Alexie's work. And even though, and I haven't read all of his work, but the themes reoccur, the character types recur. So I don't know that there's necessarily a call for like more adaptations of Sherman Alexie. I think what I would rather see, and this is really the Sherman Alexie controversy is really neither here nor there with this, but I want to see more things like Reservation Dogs.
Yeah.
I would like to see more stories being told. Also more stories coming from different places and different tribes and in different times. Like right now, in theaters, we've got Killers of the Flower Moon. So a story about the Osage. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that
Osage,
right.
I think.
Osage.
I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, I was contemplating going to see it before we recorded this episode at some point, but I just didn't have the time. I mean, it is a 3.5-hour movie, so not many people have the time in the first place. But I especially am curious to see more representation and stories about indigenous communities and people who come from indigenous ancestry.
Well, and just more of the stories that were being erased and that weren't being told. And yes, the histories, but also just the accomplishments and I'm not just talking about it in terms of film. In fact, I think film is probably the form I would least prioritize, but rather like giving artists, like Sterling Harjo of Reservation Dogs, the platform, giving them TV stage.
Yeah.
I would love to see more, theater by indigenous people.
Also, I want to point out one thing, just because you brought up Killers of the Flower Moon. There was a video that came out recently where it's from the set, and Lily Gladstone is standing there with Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese, and she's just like looking up at the sky, and she's like, "There's going to be a tornado. There's a tornado coming," and like nobody could see what she saw in it and everything. And in the season 1 finale of Reservation Dogs, I think that it's actually Gary Farmer's character is just like, there's a tornado coming. Like he can sense it before anybody. And of course the tornado comes, and in reality, Lily Gladstone was right. A tornado came, and it's like, minutes later, a cyclone started to form, and it was just like, seeing the parallels. It's just like, this is, this stuff actually happens. Lily Gladstone just like did this, and this show, kind of saw it coming. So anyway, I really liked that moment in the behind the scenes footage. Anyway,
I'll have to check that out. But that's my thing. No specific, like I want, like where I like the indigenous not the indigenous Lin-Manuel Miranda, but you know what I mean? Like where are the indigenous voices in musical theater? Sure.
I know that a major champion, and he was a creator for Reservation Dogs, Taika Waititi, was he's a major voice for indigenous voice. He's a voice for other indigenous voices. Specifically in New Zealand, but he brings that over into other countries, and he's a such an important filmmaker right now who is able to get things done. He's, he's kind of trusted in Hollywood, probably because he's a hot dude. That doesn't hurt. But like, and also he's hilarious. He's amazing. But when he is shepherding a project, it tends to do quite well. So we need more people like that. For sure.
Well, yeah, and there's someone who can like, champion indigenous artists and get indigenous artists seen and get their work out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
All about it.
I completely agree. I think that for me, smoke signals, as I was doing more, reading about it, I realized that for people who are indigenous, it was, a big movie for them. It's most likely in a lot of their collections. And I realized that the two words, "Hey, Victor," means something to a lot of people. Hey, Victor. And I feel like, a Victor Thomas, I'm good. Usually I'd say a remake for a singular thing, but I think a reboot would be an appropriate term for this, because we usually reserve the word reboot for franchises, but I feel like this story does need to kind of be rebooted, because that means it would be kind of freshened up a little bit. And to have the story of, Victor Thomas and Arnold, and I feel like if it was made today, there would be some things that could be tweaked a little bit that would perhaps resonate more for modern audiences. And, like you were saying, maybe probably not a movie. I think a series would be pretty great for this. When you have any kind of road trip journey type of thing, so many things can happen along the way that, prevent them from getting to their destination. And then, of course, getting to their destination is a whole entire thing. And then going back home is an entire other thing. Tom Skerritt, if you're still acting, you could be part of this. We love you. But, Evan Adams is also, very active acting lately. I know that he was also in Reservation Dogs, maybe just in one episode, but he's still out there. I believe that Adam Beach is still acting. Gary Farmer is still on Reservation Dogs, or has been on Reservation Dogs recently. So let me look at Adam Beach's filmography and see. Yeah, he's still doing it. Oh, whoa, wait a second. 2023, there's something called Hey Victor. What?
What?
Okay. A 2023 Canadian mockumentary comedy film directed by Cody Lightning and written by Lightning and Samuel Miller. The film stars Lightning as a fictionalized version of himself 25 years after his breakthrough role as young Victor in Smoke Signals. What? Whoa. This is happening right now.
What?
This is 2023. It was released. It's only been at Tribeca and TIFF. So June and September. Okay, with his career having faded to the point that only roles being offered to him anymore are gay porn and films and pro-fracking commercials for petrochemical companies, he hits upon a scheme to revive his career by creating and starring in his own Smoke Signals sequel, if he can only convince Adam Beach to participate in it. Dan, I'm serious. This is real.
Wow.
A mockumentary. Weird.
Okay, and Gary Farmer, Irene
Yeah, so
Bedard,
Cody Lightning played young Victor. This is wild. Dan.
That is wild.
I can't believe that I didn't even see this until just now. Weird.
This is happening in real time that we're discovering this.
Fascinating. I want to see this. Colin Mockery is in it.
Yeah.
Oh, Irene Bedard
excellent.
is back in it. Gary Farmer's in it. I mean, those two are both playing themselves. Awesome. Oh my goodness. I'm going to put a link to the trailer in this episode's description.
Awesome.
Yeah. Also in this episode's description, you can find our link tree, which has links to our social media stuff and our TeePublic store. The holidays are around the corner, so on and so forth. Fun stuff in there. And Dan, do you want to tell everyone what we're doing for our Illinois episode? And spoiler for everyone, it's not Eclipse Heights. I'm sorry to say it.
It is not Eclipse Heights. No, however, we are going to be traveling to the greater Chicago area, specifically the suburb of Aurora, Illinois. It's Friday night. It's 10 p.m. It's time for Wayne's World.
Party time.
Party
Excellent.
on. Party time. Excellent. Wayne's World 2. Oh, the wonderful cast of characters and cameos. From Cooper to Chris Farley. I needed to finish the alliteration there.
Oh, yep, there you go.
Alice Cooper, that is. Not if it was Chris Cooper, though, that would have been something else. But anyway. Yeah.
For some reason, when you said Cooper, my mind went to Chris Cooper first, and then I was like, all right, Alice Cooper. Duh.
Alice Cooper, yeah. So anyway, Wayne's World comedy classics for us, and it's, hey, we're coming up on the 30th anniversary of Wayne's World 2. So
wow. Oh my God, that's true. Oof.
Party time, excellent. Wow.
Yeah. Well, Dan, as you are headed to do your famous jump at Snake River Canyon on a rocket cycle, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.